The cold steel blades sheared through her silver blonde hair, the severed locks pooling on the sun-drenched floor. A cruel performance by the school's prince of theater just ignited a firestorm that would unravel decades of secrets and ruin empires. Elara Vance had always understood that Ethelgard Preparatory Academy of the Arts operated on a different wavelength from the rest of the world. Tucked away on the misty coast of Northern California, it was a universe where family patrons mattered more than portfolios, where the student parking lot was a silent exhibition of Teslas and Rivians, and where a single, well-placed donation could paint over any moral stain. She had clawed her way into this sanctuary of privilege on the razor's edge of her talent, a full scholarship for visual arts that covered the staggering $90,000 annual tuition but couldn't purchase her a seat at the table with the legacy students, the ones who were sculpted for Ethelgard's hallowed halls from birth. At 17, Elara possessed a creative vision so sharp it made instructors nervous and classmates insecure. Her canvases didn't just depict landscapes, they dissected the anatomy of power and privilege with brutal, beautiful strokes. Her installations challenged the very foundations of the institution that housed them. Her 4.0 GPA stood as an irrefutable testament to her brilliance in a place that often rewarded connections over genuine craft. And it was this unapologetic excellence, this refusal to dull her own light for the comfort of others, that had painted a target on her back from the moment she first stepped on campus. The morning of October 15th began with the familiar scent of sea salt and eucalyptus. Elara arrived at 7:30 a.m., an hour before most, to claim the best light in the senior art studio. Her small apartment, shared with her graphic designer mother, lacked the space and northern exposure she craved. She was deep in preparation for the prestigious Sterling Grant competition, an award that could single-handedly define her future, launching her beyond Ethelgard's gilded cage. Her hair, a striking cascade of silver blonde that was her most recognizable feature, was pulled back in a loose, functional braid. It was a genetic anomaly, a color she shared with her grandmother, along with a spine forged from iron and an eye for uncomfortable truths. By 10:45 a.m., she was seated in art criticism and theory, front row, as always. Everything changed in an instant. Mr. Alastair Finch, a man whose own poetic ambitions had long since soured into a permanent state of cynicism, was lecturing on the subversive nature of Dadaism when she felt the first tug at her braid. She dismissed it, an accident, someone shifting in their seat. The second tug was firmer, deliberate, followed by a ripple of stifled snickers from the back of the room. Elara didn't turn. She had learned early on that acknowledging the harassment was like watering a toxic weed. Then she heard it. Not a whisper, but the cold, metallic slide of sheer blades opening. The sound was so specific, so out of place, that it bypassed thought and went straight to primal alarm. But before she could react, before her body could even obey the frantic signals from her brain, she felt the blades close around the thickest part of her braid. The cut wasn't a quick snip. It was a slow, grinding severance, performed with a malicious theatricality that screamed premeditation. A thick, silver-blonde rope of hair detached from her head and fell to the polished concrete floor. The classroom, which had been buzzing with anticipation, erupted in a mixture of sharp gasps and nervous, cruel laughter. Elara's hand flew to the back of her head, her fingers finding the blunt, ragged edge where her long braid had been just moments before. She turned, her movement slow, almost robotic, to face her assailant. Liam Sterling stood in the aisle beside her desk, a pair of heavy-duty fabric shears in his perfectly manicured hand. A self-satisfied smirk danced on his lips, a smirk that would soon cost his family more than he could possibly fathom. The star of Ethelgard's theater program, the school's golden prince, had eyes sparkling with a casual cruelty that had always been insulated by his family's wealth. Behind him, his court had assembled, Chloe Murdoch, daughter of a legendary film producer, and Julian Croft Jr., whose father's name adorned a wing of the campus gallery. They formed a semicircle of privilege, their faces a gallery of reactions from feigned shock to open amusement. They were waiting for the climax of their performance, for her to cry, to scream, to give them the emotional payoff they had scripted. Mr. Finch, a man of profound intellectualism and infinitesimal courage, finally registered the disturbance. His gaze flickered from Elara's violated hair to the shears in Liam's hand, to the silver evidence coiled on the floor. He performed a swift, silent calculation of power dynamics, a mental calculus that would later feature prominently in a federal investigation. He cleared his throat. As I was saying, he continued, turning his back to the scene, his chalk scratching against the blackboard, the genius of Duchamp was in his recontextualization of the mundane. His voice dissolved into white noise as the reality crashed down on Elara. It wasn't the haircut itself, hair grows back, and her identity wasn't woven into its strands. It was the choreography of the assault. The way phones had materialized in hands seconds before the cut. The way even students on the periphery had subtly shifted their desks for a better view. This wasn't a spontaneous prank. It was an orchestrated event. And Mr. Finch's willful blindness was the institutional stamp of approval. The sickness at Ethelgard wasn't just among the students, it was in the very foundation. Slowly, with a poise that defied the violation she had just endured, Elara stood up. Her movements were deliberate, each one a measured beat in a new performance she was directing herself. She didn't touch her hair again. She didn't grant them the satisfaction of seeing her assess the damage. Instead, she walked to Mr. Finch's desk, her boots making a soft, rhythmic sound in the suddenly silent room. The teacher's hand, still holding the chalk, trembled almost imperceptibly. Mr. Finch, Elara's voice was calm, yet it carried the chilling stillness of the air before a lightning strike. I need to report an assault. The chalk stick snapped in his hand. He turned, his face a mask of practiced ignorance. I'm sure it was just a misunderstanding, Ms. Vance. Please, return to your seat. We wouldn't want to cause a scene. A misunderstanding? Elara repeated, her voice as precise as a surgeon's scalpel. She gestured to the floor. Would you like me to collect the physical evidence of this misunderstanding? Or should I just describe it for the police report I'll be filing? The temperature in the room plummeted. Liam's smirk faltered, the first crack in his armor of inherited immunity. Chloe Murdoch's phone, which had been recording, lowered slightly, its function shifting from entertainment to liability. Mr. Finch's face cycled through shades of crimson. Now, Elara, let's not overreact. Liam was clearly joking. Perhaps if your artistic statements weren't so provocative, these tensions wouldn't arise. It was a confession disguised as an accusation. A few students gasped, recognizing that their teacher had just crossed the line from passive enabler to active accomplice. Elara smiled. It was a chilling, knowing smile that would feature in Liam Sterling's nightmares for years. It wasn't a smile of pain or anger, but of vindication. He had just handed her the exact weapon she needed. Provocative, she repeated, savoring the word. So, to be clear for the 22 witnesses present, you are stating, on record, that my academic and artistic excellence provoked a physical assault with a weapon? And that this assault is excusable as a joke? Is that your official position? Mr. Finch's mouth opened and closed, a fish gasping in the toxic air of his own cowardice. He glanced at Liam, a fleeting, desperate look that laid bare the school's true hierarchy. Liam's father was the chairman of the board. Elara's mother designed logos for small businesses to make rent. The math, in Mr. Finch's world, was brutally simple. That's not what he stammered. I know exactly what you meant, Elara cut him off. She turned, her newly shorn, jagged hair creating a defiant halo in the morning light. She addressed the entire class. I want everyone to remember what you saw today. Remember what you heard. Because I promise you, this is far from over. She gathered her things with methodical grace, refusing to be rushed, and walked out, leaving behind a classroom thick with the stench of fear and complicity. By lunch, the video was a virus. Chloe had posted it to her private story, but in the digital age, privacy is an illusion. A screen recording, sent anonymously, had escaped Ethelgard's curated bubble and was now metastasizing across the internet. Elara spent her lunch period in the office of Dean Anya Sharma. The office itself was a masterpiece of minimalist design, more art gallery than administrative space. Dean Sharma, polished and formidable, sat behind a desk of reclaimed wood that cost more than Elara's mother's car. "This is deeply unfortunate, Elara," the dean began, her voice a carefully modulated instrument of sympathy. "I understand you're upset about the incident." "Assault," Elara corrected, her voice firm. "It wasn't an incident. And yes, I'm upset that a student attacked me with a weapon while a teacher endorsed it." The dean's eye twitched. "Let's not be dramatic. Fabric shears are hardly a weapon." "An interesting theory," Elara countered. "Shall I borrow them and demonstrate their harmlessness on your perfectly coiffed hair?" "For educational purposes, of course." Dean Sharma's hand instinctively went to her own sleek, expensive haircut. "That won't be necessary. I've spoken with Mr. Finch. This was a case of teenage hijinks." "Hijinks?" Elara pulled out her phone and played the viral video. Then, she produced a stack of printed screenshots. "This is what you call hijinks? These are from a private group called the Elysian Circle. They're discussing their plan to, and I quote, put the scholarship ice queen in her place. They debated between destroying my portfolio and cutting my hair. They chose the hair because, as Julian Croft Jr. helpfully pointed out, my art is probably backed up to the cloud, since she's poor and paranoid." The dean's face went rigid. The mask of polished concern slipped, revealing cold, hard calculation. "You have no idea what you are playing with, young lady. The families that support this institution, they will crush you." "They can try," Elara said, standing. "But first, they'll have to explain this." She paused at the door. "Oh, and Dean Sharma? You might want to check your email. A reporter from the San Francisco Chronicle seems to have questions about Ethelgard's disciplinary record. Someone sent her a very interesting spreadsheet. It shows a fascinating correlation between punishment severity and family donation size." Leaving the dean's office, Elara walked into her next class, a high-stakes rehearsal in the main theater. It should have been a refuge. But Liam Sterling was there, standing on her designated mark on the stage, flanked by his friends. The message was clear: we own this space, too. Ms. Du Bois, the stern but fair dance director, looked on nervously. "Mr. Sterling, that's Elara's position for this scene." "Oh, I'm sure she won't mind," Liam said, his voice dripping with condescension. "We're all friends here. Right, Elara?" The room held its breath. This was the test. Would she back down? Elara walked onto the stage, set her bag down, and pulled out her phone, hitting record. "For the record, this is Liam Sterling, who assaulted me this morning, now attempting to deny me access to my educational requirements by physically blocking my assigned position. Ms. Du Bois, you are a witness to this, correct?" The director nodded, reluctantly. "I am." "And you have asked him to move?" "I have." Liam's confidence wavered. "You can't just record." "Actually, I can," Elara said, her voice echoing slightly in the vast space. "Your little performance this morning established a clear pattern of harassment. Every interaction we have from this moment forward is evidence. So please, continue. My lawyer will appreciate the documentation." One of Liam's friends tugged his arm. "Dude, let's go." Liam hesitated, trapped in the spotlight of Elara's phone and his own crumbling ego. 10 seconds, Elara said pleasantly. "Then I call my attorney and put him on speaker for the whole class to hear about civil suits and restraining orders." 9, 8. Liam stormed off the stage, his friends trailing behind him like defeated soldiers. Elara took her mark, her face calm, but her heart pounding with the thrill of a battle won. She had held her ground. But she knew the war was just beginning. After school, Elara stood outside the grand, minimalist gates of Ethelgard, waiting for the Uber that served as her chariot back to the real world. The sleek, silent electric cars of her classmates glided past, a constant reminder of the chasm between her life and theirs. Her phone buzzed incessantly with notifications, a torrent of support, threats, and interview requests from journalists who smelled the rot beneath Ethelgard's pristine veneer. She ignored them, focusing on the simple act of getting home. A deep blue Lucid Air, a vehicle of silent and futuristic luxury, pulled up beside her. It wasn't her ride. The tinted passenger window slid down, revealing a woman with the same sharp cheekbones and intense eyes as Liam Sterling, but her expression held a weary wisdom that Liam lacked entirely. Elara recognized her from articles in art magazines. Isabel Sterling, Liam's estranged older sister, a respected independent curator in her own right. "Get in," Isabel said. It wasn't a request, it was a command laced with urgency. Elara hesitated. "I'm good, thanks. My Uber's almost here." "I'm trying to help you, you brilliant, stubborn girl," Isabel's voice was low and taut. "Get in the car before someone from the school sees us talking." Against her better judgment, Elara complied. The car's interior smelled of expensive, vegetable-tanned leather and the faint, clean scent of ozone from the air purifier. It was a world away from the lingering smell of fast food in her usual rideshare. Isabel pulled away from the curb, her hands tight on the steering wheel. "You have no idea what you've started," she said, her eyes fixed on the winding coastal road ahead. The video, the threats of lawsuits, the reporter. "Do you really think you're the first person to try and challenge the power structure at Ethelgard?" "I think I'm the first one with proof that's gone public," Elara replied, her voice steady. Isabel let out a bitter, humorless laugh. "Proof? You sweet, naive thing. Let me tell you about the last family that had proof. The Alvarezes, 4 years ago. Their son, a brilliant musician, was being systematically tormented by Liam's crew. They had proof. Recordings, emails, documented proof of the administration covering it up." Elara's pulse quickened. She'd heard whispers of the Alvarez family, but the story had always been vague, shrouded in rumor. Within 6 months, Isabel continued, her voice cold, Mr. Alvarez's architecture firm lost its biggest client due to a sudden restructuring. Mrs. Alvarez's restaurant was buried in a series of anonymous, cripplingly negative online reviews. Their mortgage was suddenly sold to a subsidiary of my father's investment firm and called in. Their son's applications to conservatories were all lost in the mail or arrived with anonymous, damaging letters attached. They left town, broken and silent. The car stopped at a red light. Isabel turned to face Elara, her face a smooth, unreadable mask, but her eyes held a universe of pain. "That's what happens when you fight these people. They don't just defeat you. They erase you." "Then why are you telling me this?" Elara asked, her throat dry. "Why are you helping me?" "Because," Isabel's voice cracked, a hairline fracture in her composure, "unlike the Alvarezes, you have something they didn't. Me." She reached into the center console and retrieved a small, unassuming object, a simple piece of paper with a long, complex password handwritten on it. "Insurance." Elara stared at the paper. "What is this?" "It's the password to a ghost server," Isabel explained. 15 years of Ethelgard's dirty laundry. Every cover-up. Every bribe. Every crime hidden behind a donation check. Financial records, email chains, security footage that was supposedly wiped. Everything. My father is a meticulous monster. He keeps records of his leverage on everyone. Why would you give this to me?" Elara breathed, the weight of the secret pressing down on her. Isabel's mask finally shattered, revealing the raw grief beneath. "Because my brother is becoming my father, and I stood by and did nothing. Because I have watched that school chew up and spit out brilliant kids for profit, and I stayed silent. Because my best friend was driven out of that school, her dreams shattered, and we covered it up. Sent her to a wellness retreat in Switzerland. But I know the truth. That school broke her." She pressed the paper into Elara's hand. Liam Sterling is a symptom. The school, the system, my father, they are the disease. If you're going to take this fight to them, you fight all of it. Burn it all down. This could destroy you, too, Elara pointed out. Your family. My family is a gilded cage. I've been dead inside for years, playing my part. But you still have fire. Use it. The car pulled up to Elara's modest apartment complex, which looked even shabbier in contrast to the lucid sleek perfection. As Elara opened the door, Isabel spoke one last time. They will come for you now. With everything they have. Your mother's job, your scholarship, your future. But that server, it has enough to put several people in prison. Including my father. Use it wisely. Elara stood on the sidewalk, watching the silent blue car disappear. The small piece of paper in her hand felt impossibly heavy, weighted with the power to topple an empire. The apartment smelled of turpentine and lavender, the signature scent of her mother's creative hustle and attempts to mask the building's perpetual mustiness. Lena Vance sat at their small kitchen table, still in the paint-splattered jeans she'd worn all day, her face a roadmap of exhaustion and worry. The local news was playing on a tablet propped against a stack of art books, Elara's face, and her butchered hair, filling the screen. Ellie, her mother said, the single word carrying a decade's worth of love and fear. What have you done? Elara sat down across from her, the slip of paper from Isabel hidden in her pocket, feeling like it might burn through the denim. On the screen, a reporter stood outside Ethelgard's gates, her voice grave. A shocking incident that has gone viral, raising serious questions about bullying and accountability at one of the nation's most elite arts academies. They cut my hair, Mom, Elara said quietly. In class. The teacher watched. Lena reached across the table, her fingers, stained with ink and calloused from years of gripping a stylus, gently touched the ragged ends of her daughter's hair. I see that, baby. But what I'm seeing on the news, lawyers, reporters, investigations. Elara, these people have money. The kind of money that makes problems vanish. Like they made the Alvarez boy vanish? Elara asked softly. Lena flinched, a flicker of old fear in her eyes. Elara pulled out the slip of paper and placed it on the scratched wooden table between them. I'm not disappearing, Mom. Not this time. Her mother stared at the password as if it were a live scorpion. What is that? 15 years of evidence, Elara said, her voice low and intense. Every crime Ethelgard covered up. Every bribe. Every family they destroyed. She met her mother's gaze. I'm going to expose all of it. Lena's face cycled through a storm of emotions, pride, terror, anger, and finally, a weary resignation that pierced Elara's heart. They'll come after my freelance work, she whispered. Some of my biggest clients have connections to the Ethelgard board. Marcus Sterling's wife recommended me for the gallery project. I know, Elara said. Mom, how many nights have you stayed up finishing projects so we could pay the rent? How many times have you been lowballed by clients who think artist means desperate? That's different. That was my choice. No, it wasn't, Elara's voice hardened. It was survival. Working yourself to the bone so I could have a shot at a better life, while kids like Liam Sterling have that life handed to them at birth. I am done being grateful for the scraps they throw us. They put their hands on me, Mom. They cut a piece of my body off for their own amusement, and everyone just watched. Lena was silent for a long moment, then she stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city lights blurred behind her tired eyes. When she turned back, the fear was gone, replaced by a glint of steel Elara recognized in herself. Show me. For the next 4 hours, they were a two-person war room, huddled over Elara's laptop. The files on the ghost server painted a picture of systemic corruption so vast it was breathtaking. There were financial records detailing a massive donation for admission scheme, complete with a tiered price list. Emails between administrators and board members strategized on how to manage and silence victims of assault and plagiarism. And worse, so much worse. My God, Lena breathed, pointing at a folder labeled Portfolio Review Committee. Inside were documents showing how the school systematically gave lower scores to talented students from low-income or minority backgrounds, ensuring the top awards and accolades always went to the children of the wealthy and connected. They're not just covering up crimes, Elara said, her voice shaking with rage. They're actively curating their student body's success, strangling real talent to make room for mediocrity with a pedigree. A notification popped up on Elara's phone. An unknown number. You have 1 hour to delete the video and issue a public apology for slandering Mr. Sterling. This is your only warning. Elara screenshotted it and kept digging. 30 minutes later, another message. Your mother is a freelance designer, isn't she? It would be a shame if her professional reputation were to be damaged. Reputations are so fragile. Lena read it over her daughter's shoulder. Instead of fear, her face hardened into fury. Forward that to me, she commanded. They're threatening me now. These entitled cowards. The doorbell rang at exactly 10 p.m. Peeking through the peephole, Elara saw a man in a ruthlessly tailored suit holding a leather briefcase. She recognized him from Ethelgard's website, Julian Croft, the school's chief legal counsel. Don't open it, Lena whispered. I'm not afraid of him, Elara said, opening the door but keeping the security chain latched. Mr. Croft. It's a bit late for a house call, isn't it? The lawyer's smile was all teeth. Ms. Vance. I'm here to offer a mutually beneficial resolution. Assault isn't a misunderstanding, and I'm not interested in your resolutions. You haven't heard the offer, he said smoothly. We understand that even a full scholarship has its limits. We are prepared to offer a comprehensive, artistic futures package. Full tuition and living expenses to any art institute of your choosing. RSD, CalArts. A generous grant to fund your mother's design studio. All we ask in return is a simple statement clarifying that today's events were a prank that went too far, and that the matter is resolved. Elara laughed, a sharp, incredulous sound. You want me to lie, on camera, to protect Liam Sterling, for money? Think of your future, Ms. Vance. Your mother's future. I am, she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. Which is why I can't accept. It would be a conflict of interest, you see. Once the IRS and the FBI see the contents of the Sterling Ghost server, my testimony will be quite valuable. She watched his professional composure disintegrate in real time. The blood drained from his face. You're bluffing. Am I? Elara smiled that same chilling smile from the classroom. Ask your boss about the file labeled Legal Retainer Invoices. I hear embezzling from an endowment fund is a federal crime. Now get off my property before I add trespassing to the list of charges. After Croft scurried away, Elara and Lena worked through the night. They were no longer just victims, they were soldiers preparing a battlefield. They created multiple encrypted backups of the server, uploading them to cloud services based in different countries. They drafted a dead man switch, an email scheduled to be sent to a dozen major news outlets that would only be cancelled by a daily check-in. If anything happened to them, the whole world would get the story. At 3 a.m., Elara's phone rang. It was Ms. Dubois, the dance director. Her voice was strained, terrified. Elara, I'm sorry to call so late. There's an emergency board meeting tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. They're going to vote on your expulsion. On what grounds? Elara asked, her heart hammering. Creating a hostile learning environment, inciting public unrest, and maliciously distributing defamatory content. Elara, they have the votes. They're trying to silence you before you can do more damage. Ms. Dubois paused. And there's more. The Sterlings have hired the law firm that buried the Alvarez family. They don't just fight lawsuits, they destroy lives. Be careful. Thank you for the warning, Elara said, her voice firm despite the chill running down her spine. It's a good thing I'm not planning to play by their rules. She hung up and turned to her mother. They're expelling me. Over my dead body, Lena said, her face set. We need help. Real help. Elara pulled up a contact she had saved months ago, a lifeline she'd hoped never to use. Naomi Rivera. The older sister of a boy whose musical ambitions had been crushed by Ethelgard's system 3 years prior. Naomi was now a fiery civil rights attorney in San Francisco. She'd told a mutual friend, if anyone at that school needs a fighter, they can call me. The phone rang twice before a sharp, alert voice answered. Rivera. Ms. Rivera, this is Elara Vance. From Ethelgard Academy. I saw the video. Naomi's voice was clipped, angry. I've been waiting for a call like this for 3 years. How bad is it? I have 15 years of evidence on a server. Financial crimes, cover-ups, systemic discrimination. They're moving to expel me at a board meeting tomorrow morning. There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end of the line. Then, I'll be there by 7:30 a.m. Do not go into that meeting without me. And Elara? From this moment on, record everything. Every single interaction. We're not just fighting an expulsion anymore. We're building a federal case. The next morning, Elara stood before her bathroom mirror. With a steady hand, she took a pair of scissors and finished what Liam Sterling had started. She cut her hair into a sharp, intentional, asymmetrical bob. It was an act of reclamation. If they wanted to make her appearance a battlefield, she would show them a warrior. When they arrived at Ethelgard, news vans already lined the entrance. A small group of protesters held signs, "Art, not abuse," and "Protect students, not donors." Naomi Rivera was waiting for them, a power suit her armor and a briefcase her weapon. She was a blaze of controlled fury. They will try to ambush and intimidate you in there, Naomi said, her voice low and rapid. Don't speak unless I nod. Record everything. And whatever happens, do not let them see you sweat. The boardroom was a monument to the fusion of old money and new tech, dominated by a single, massive slab of polished redwood that served as a table. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the Pacific Ocean, a serene backdrop for the ugliness about to unfold. The board members were already seated, a collection of venture capitalists, art collectors, and tech billionaires who believed their net worth entitled them to their own reality. At the head of the table sat Marcus Sterling, Liam's father. He had the same cruel set to his mouth as his son, but his was honed by decades of corporate warfare. Dean Sharma began, her voice dripping with false solemnity. We are here to discuss Ms. Vance's recent, disruptive behavior. Naomi Rivera stood up, her movement slicing through the tension. Actually, she announced, we're here to discuss Ethelgard Academy's systematic violation of federal education laws, Title IX requirements, and a multi-year criminal conspiracy to defraud the government and obstruct justice. The room exploded. Board members shouted, threatened, and demanded Naomi be removed. She let the storm break over her, an unmovable rock in a sea of outrage. Furthermore, she continued, her voice rising effortlessly above the din, my client is in possession of evidence pertaining to financial crimes that fall under the RICO Act. Embezzlement, money laundering, tax fraud. All documented, all traceable, and all currently being reviewed by the FBI and the IRS. Marcus Sterling slammed his hand on the massive table, the sound cracking like a gunshot. This is blackmail. No, Elara said, standing up, ignoring Naomi's cautionary glance. Her voice was quiet, but it commanded the room's attention. Blackmail is threatening my mother's livelihood if I don't stay quiet. Blackmail is leveraging donations to cover up your son's crimes. This, she pulled out her phone. This is justice. She hit play. A recording filled the room. Liam's voice, arrogant and clear. Gonna cut that Ice Queen's hair. Dad says she needs to learn that scholarship kids should be seen and not heard. Then Chloe's voice. Make sure you get it on video. We can edit it to make it look like she freaked out for no reason. The faces of the board members went slack with shock. But Elara wasn't done. She connected her phone to the room's projector. An Excel spreadsheet filled the massive screen. It was the donation for admission ledger. Next, a string of emails between Dean Sharma and Marcus Sterling. The Alvarez family is becoming a problem. They have recordings. Sterling's reply, I'll make some calls. By the end of the quarter, they won't be able to afford their own lawyer, let alone a lawsuit. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the sound of Dean Sharma's ragged breathing. Her career was over. Every person in this room has a choice, Naomi stated, her voice like ice. Resign immediately and cooperate with the authorities, or be named as a defendant in a federal lawsuit that will strip you of your assets, your reputations, and your liberty. Marcus Sterling rose slowly, his face a mask of incandescent rage. You think you've won? You little charity case. You have no idea what real power is. I will. Mr. Sterling. A new voice cut through the air. The glass doors to the boardroom slid open. A calm man in a dark suit stood there, his badge gleaming. I'm Special Agent Costa with the FBI. We'll need you to step away from the table. Please keep your hands where I can see them. The boardroom filled with federal agents. It turned out Naomi had delivered a curated package of the most damning evidence to the authorities at 5 a.m. As Marcus Sterling was led away in handcuffs, he turned, his eyes burning with pure hatred for Elara. This isn't over, he spat. Elara met his gaze without flinching. Yes, she said simply. It is. The fall of the House of Sterling and Ethelgard Academy was swift and spectacular. The story dominated the national news for weeks, the scholarship student who toppled an empire. Dr. Brennan was arrested. Board members were indicted. The school's assets were frozen, its accreditation revoked. 6 months later, the building that once housed Ethelgard was being repurposed as a state-funded public center for the arts, its mission to serve the very students the old regime had sought to exclude. Liam Sterling, his future as a theater star evaporated, was sentenced to juvenile detention, his crimes too public to be bought away. His father, Marcus, faced a litany of federal charges that would keep him in court, and likely prison, for the rest of his life. But for Elara, the true victory lay in the smaller, quieter transformations. Isabel Sterling, having testified against her own father, was now leading the charge to create a foundation for underprivileged artists. Ms. Du Bois, the dance teacher, had been appointed director of the new Public Arts Center. Lena Vance's design studio was thriving, her client list now filled with people who respected her talent, not her connections. 2 years later, Elara Vance stood on the iconic red circle of a TED Talk stage. Her hair was still short, a chic, powerful style she had made her own. Her talk, titled, Creative Courage, How Art Speaks Truth to Power, was a viral sensation before it even concluded. They tried to cut me down to size, she told the rapt audience, her voice clear and strong. They tried to make me smaller, quieter, more grateful. But what they failed to understand is that when you try to prune a strong plant, you don't kill it. You encourage new, more vigorous growth. She looked directly into the camera, her gaze unwavering. To everyone who has ever been told they don't belong, that their voice is too loud, that their dreams are too big, you are not alone. Document everything. Build your alliances. And never, ever apologize for the space you occupy. They didn't give it to you. You earned it. Later that night, in her small office, she scrolled through messages of support. Her work had just begun. She had founded the Artistic Integrity Project, a nonprofit that provided legal aid and a powerful platform for young artists facing discrimination and abuse in educational institutions. Her phone buzzed. It was an email with the subject line, "Help me." It was from a young photography student at an elite East Coast conservatory, describing a situation eerily similar to her own. The cycle of privilege protecting predators continued, but now, there was a roadmap for fighting back. A playbook for justice. Elara smiled, her fingers already flying across the keyboard, ready to help another young warrior find their voice. They had cut her hair in a moment of thoughtless cruelty, never imagining they were forging a weapon. Now, she spent her days cutting through the red tape of injustice, ensuring that no student's future would ever again be left on the cutting room floor. This fight for fairness is far from over. Share this story if you believe no one's dream should be silenced. And in the comments below, share a time you stood up for what was right. Please, always comment with respect for everyone's experiences. Your voice matters. Subscribe for more stories that empower.